Thank you so much. It is really an honor to be here together with you, and I'm very happy to be able to share with you about what God has been doing with us over in Uganda. I work with a tribe called the Karamojong, who are a nomadic pastoralist tribe out there, and they are really suffering at this point in time because of changes in the climate that are going on there. And so I thought it was very appropriate to have a chance to come and share with you and to see how we're trying to mitigate some of those effects. So I'm a veterinarian and also a missionary. I work for Christian Veterinary Mission based out of Seattle, but I've been living now in Uganda for almost 20 years. So there's Uganda, and that's Karamoja is over in the northeast corner there, the purple area there, that's where Karamoja is, and that is a very isolated area. The main centers of the country are down near Lake Victoria. Karamoja has a very different ecosystem than the rest of the country. Also, you'll see in that upper left corner there, that pink area is Karamoja, and that's a very dry area relative to the rest of the country, which is lush and fertile in many areas and can grow a lot of crops. But we find that climate change really affects people so much in the arid and semi-arid areas, and that's where Karamoja is. That's also where there's a lot of livestock. It's a cattle corridor you can see coming through on the upper right corner there. That's where all the cattle are in the country, and the darker areas are the areas with the most animals. And so as a veterinarian, I love Karamoja because there's lots of cows to play with out there. Down on the lower side there, you see the rainfall patterns, and so Karamoja has the least rainfall of all of Uganda, about 700 millimeters per year. Here are our people. They're very independent people, culturally intact, semi-nomadic agro-pastoralists, so they also do agriculture as well as caring for their animals. There are 7 different sub-tribes of the Karamojong, and that gives a little bit of a problem out there because they have animosity towards one another, and so there's a lot of fighting in the area. And they've been able to access AK-47 submachine guns, and so each sub-tribe fights against the other one. So you can see all the 7 different locations there, and on the borders of each area are huge no-man's lands that had to be abandoned because people carrying machine guns through the area, you get killed if you go there. And so everyone is isolating themselves around the towns, and whenever they go out to try to graze animals, they can get killed. So it's been a challenging place to work in, to try to bring reconciliation to the people, as well as to share Christ with them, and to be able to help them to improve their lives through livestock and other ministries that we have there. It's about 1 million people in Karamoja. This is my house in the left corner, and that's your visiting house if you want to come visit me. My roommate is just perched on that chair there. She's a little monkey, and that's my truck. So the Karamojong are a very interesting tribe to work together with. I've really enjoyed being with them, and they have 3 different age sets. The older age set is the opinion leaders of the community, and then you have the middle age set who are the warriors, and then the youth after that. They live a pastoral lifestyle of transhumance, and they move around the communities. During the wet season, they're around the villages, and during the dry season, then they move out to look for pasture. They're a part of a group called the Nilotes. They're in what's called the Karamoja cluster. There's quite a few different tribes that are related to them nearby, including the Ga, Dodos, Toposa, Turkana, Marili, who are also in other countries, Kenya and Sudan, even in Ethiopia. So it's quite a large group of people. This is how they typically live. Because it's dangerous out there, they put thorny fences all around their homes to protect them from people who are coming to raid and to steal their animals. And then they graze the animals out, and they have gardens out near the homes. Then in the dry season, then the men will leave together with the boys and go graze the animals, and the women remain there and try to have their gardens. But the changes in climate have really affected the people, especially on the side of the gardens. The animals are doing much better, but the agriculture side is really diminishing, and people are struggling in many ways. They grow sorghum, millet, cassava, sunflowers, cowpeas, beans, and it's all rain-fed cropping. They have 4 different wealth groups. They're quite a poor community. There's more than 82% of them are below the poverty level of $2 per day. And so we find that there's quite a bit of a challenge in the area for the people to survive. They're very vulnerable because of that, and the climatic changes have really had an effect on them because of that. Some of their vulnerability is because they're isolated. They have a subsistence living. They don't have a lot of extra income. They're semi-nomadic, low literacy rate. They have poor governance in the area and a lot of corruption in the officials. The poorest wealth groups are the ones who suffer the most. Also the women and children, the elderly, sick, and those who don't have any land for putting a garden. The rural people are more isolated than the urban people, and those who don't have machine guns are also isolated and more vulnerable because they can't protect themselves. They love their cows and they milk them, and that's their main food they get from, at least protein source, is from the milk and the meat of their animals. Unfortunately, many of them do get killed in the fighting as well as with diseases and such. And so as a veterinarian, I can go there and work together with them and help them to try to keep their animals more healthy, and then develop relationships and be able to talk about other things with them also, including improving their lives on the side of helping the environment. So the fighting has become, it was quite intense for quite a few years. It's become less nowadays because the government is disarming most of the people. Unfortunately, when they disarm, they leave a lot of people with guns as well. And so now the people who are the worst criminals have guns, but no one else has them to defend themselves. And so it is a challenge on that side also. Originally, they just had spears, but now they have AK-47s. So we do have a lot of loss of life in the area. The young men have become insubordinate. They no longer follow the tribal leaders. They form temporary alliances with different groups and to go and raid in other areas. And then the military tries to come in and stop them. So all that, all those challenges then compound the issues of climate change, because now you have many other issues of conflict in the area. When climate change comes in, then you also have that compounded on top of it. And sometimes the effects don't mix very well. In order to study the changes in climate together with the people, we do what we call Participatory Rural Appraisal, or PRA. We sit with the people and we look at what their environment is like, and we ask them questions, and they help us to understand the changes they've been seeing over time, and help us to see possible interventions. We set up a seasonal calendar with them that can show us the different ways that they view their lifestyle and what they do during different parts of the year, how the seasons normally move, and what changes they've seen. And that's been very helpful to be able to talk with them through their own perspective, because they know how things have been in the past. They've named the different seasons for different parts of their society or different parts of their activities that they do. And so they're able to explain the changes that happened because they know what it was like in the past. We've seen, especially, that they consider that their rainy season is shortening. The end part of it keeps the rains don't continue to the end of the rainy season, and the middle of the rainy season sometimes has more rain than what they would normally have. Other times they can have really dramatic changes in the weather, and to the point of huge floods coming in or huge droughts coming in alternating years. And so that really confuses the whole system of management that they're used to, because they have a regular system that they follow, but when they only have one season for planting their crops, and when they don't plant the crop, then they don't have any food. And so you have a whole year without food, and that's a pretty tough year to be out there with people who are starving. Here's where they get a lot of their water is from springs, but those springs all dry up during the dry season. So they have boreholes also. The different NGOs have sunk many different boreholes in the community, and they can get their fresh water from there. Here we are trying to put one in the peace communities. We have a peace area where we're trying to bring people together that have been fighting, to have them come live together in a resettlement site jointly, so they can work together and live together. It was a tough place to get to. You can see us there with with trying to get through the grass with the vehicle. There we got the water pump going. You can see it's so isolated out there. We had to bring army guys with us. That's a rocket-propelled grenade launcher protecting our water source over on the lower corner there. And so you can see that water sometimes can bring a lot of conflict in the area. Fortunately, we didn't get anyone coming trying to take the water source from us, but it is a challenge at times. They also have hand-dug ponds that they can give the cows water from. Sometimes the people also drink that water. Here's the piped water sources that are just starting to come into the area with solar pumps that are hooked up to the boreholes. We do have water crises sometimes, and we carry the water to the people at that time. So we see the changing weather patterns have been quite a difficult thing for the people. It causes reduction in the annual precipitation in the area, so then the crops don't grow well, the grass doesn't grow well. The season has been getting shorter, and the rain has been unpredictable. These are things that the people have been sharing together with us. They say there has been some slight change in temperature, and there's been frequent natural disasters in the community. And we can see some of those things also in this data that we've collected or other people have collected over time. This is a graph showing about 10 years of rainfall in the area. You can see that the rain is getting less and less over the years if you average the differences between that angled line coming down. It shows that over that 10-year period, the rain is getting less. Then we can see that also that the rainy season is shortening. That's the chart over on the upper right. That is the end of the rainy season. You're getting a little bit more rain. No, let's see. That's in the middle of the rainy season. You're getting more rain at the middle of the rainy season. That's around June and July. And then the two lower ones are at the end of the rainy season when you're getting less rain. And so the rain is concentrating more during the rainy season and not spreading till the end. And so crops that need to take 5 months to grow will never grow because they don't have enough rain to finish up the crop at the end. Here you can see how the annual precipitation has changed from the original one where you had two nice sets of periods of time when you get rain. Now it's spread out. The lower part of the end part of the graph there is spread out, and you don't have the rain in large enough quantity to have the crops to grow. These graphs also show the distribution of the rain. The quantity in the graph in the middle there has increased. Oh no, it hasn't. I'm sorry. The quantity there, this is people responding to questions over what differences they've seen in the rainfall patterns. And in the chart in the middle, the first column is those people who think that they had less rain during the year. And that's the majority of people agree that they had less rain. In the middle column there are people that say it's been variable. And the people on the right are saying that it's been average. Then on the top one, the majority of people are saying that the rain comes too late, have a late onset for the rains. And then in the lower right one, they're saying that the length of the rainy season has decreased. This is the number of disasters that happen over an 80-year period of time. You can see the number of disasters many years ago were very few, but recently now they just keep climbing and climbing. Floods especially have come. We've never had floods in these arid areas before. And we have a lot of famines that have been coming through also almost every other year. For the last several years we've been having famines because the people's crops aren't surviving. We see the crops don't mature properly. They get a bad harvest. The crops have pests and diseases. Livestock are doing better than the crops, fortunately, because the livestock are able to survive better because they don't need the rain in such a consistent time period. They can have more rain that spreads out over a period of time, and then the grass can grow during that time. We see that the crops don't grow very well. They don't mature to the proper stage, and then when they harvest it, they don't get all the harvest that they could have gotten. We have different diseases that come on the crops also. This is an ergot that's growing on this bulrush millet. Then we also see that the livestock are doing better than the crops from this chart here. The upper chart is showing you the rainfall patterns that we had in a 4-year period. And that's the rainfall during the cropping season. And so the red parts are the ones that they're showing there's deficient water. And so those 2 middle years there didn't have enough water for the crops to grow, so the crops all failed. But in the lower one down here, that's the rain over the whole season. And you see most of that was adequate. And so then the grass that grows year-round was able to grow fine, and the animals did fine, but the crops failed during those time periods. And so when you're working with a people group that loves to have their cows but also wants to have agriculture, the agriculture side is failing, but the animals are doing better. Even on the side of milk production, you see that the animals are still producing enough milk. This chart over on the left-hand side is the number of milking animals has gone down, but the right-hand side there, the milk production has stayed adequate because they still had enough grass during the time period. It didn't stress them on that side. We have livestock health problems that come up, different diseases that the animals are getting because of the change in the climate. Even on the side of the human health, there's quite a few disease outbreaks that have been coming to the community. We had a cholera outbreak. We had several people die from yellow fever in our communities. And many people in my village right now have hepatitis, and they're trying to get to the capital city to get treatment. This is a child that's affected by climate change. This is our climate change baby. Her name is Muya. Her mother had been a good friend of mine, and she lived in Karamoja. She had married there and was trying to grow gardens there for 4 or 5 years. Every year the garden would fail, and she never had enough food for her family. She had one child that was born and died of malnutrition in the first year. Then she kept failing to grow the garden. Finally her husband got so mad at her he kicked her out of the house. So she left and went to another city to live. And from there she found another man and stayed together with him, got another child, but she got sick. And during that time period that child died also. So then she stayed 1 more year with that man, got pregnant again with Muya, and then was sick again at that point in time. She had a disease that she had gotten from Karamoja. And so as she was coming back, leaving that man again, trying to come back to Karamoja, she died on the way. And so she left Muya there without anybody to care for her. She had been chased from her home because she didn't have enough food, because the climate had changed enough that her crops could no longer grow. And so this happened just last week. I got this baby. So I don't know what I'm going to do when I get back to Uganda. I'm going to have a baby or not, but I had to leave it with an orphanage as I came here. But little Muya really needs your prayers because she needs somebody to look after her. But it's something that affects all of our communities out there, and all of their lives are affected in a deeper way than just a crop failing. It means people will live or people will die. Here are the many different boreholes that they've drilled to try to provide water for the people, 800 and some in our communities there. But because they've drilled so many boreholes, it's also removing a lot of the water from the ground, so the ground water is decreasing quite a bit over time. It causes this negative water balance, and then we find out that many of the boreholes are then drying up and not able to provide water for the people. We get too much food security because of the problems with the climate change in the area. We find that people don't have enough food to eat, and that leads to poverty. We also find that the biodiversity goes down and down because people are trying to take advantage of the wildlife, try to go after the wildlife, or try to work in other ways that they can have an income because they don't have enough money from their food. They deforest the area becomes more like a desert. We have a lot of erosion and a lot of evaporation. So you can see the area becoming more and more gray over time. So even at that point, once we see that the climate change is happening, we also see that the challenges of the people related to climate are interacting also with the challenges that they're having with the conflicts that are in the area, because conflicts are causing many problems, and the climate change is causing many problems, and those, when they combine together, sometimes they combine in a multiplicative way to make things that get worse, and other times they make it impossible for anyone to have any coping strategy, because one coping strategy will negate the other one. And so we end up having people who have no choices. They end up falling into poverty. Here we can see how conflict is related to rainfall. This is an interesting study that was done by USAID, looking at the changes in rainfall over time, and then looking at when the greatest conflicts came up in Karamoja. And you can see the fluctuation in the rainfall matches together with the different spots at the bottom where there were the highest impact of conflict in the area, showing that it did have an impact when there was changes in rainfall, either if it was too much rainfall from floods or not enough rainfall and causing a drought. The same thing with forage in the area. This was a study done by Meyer and Bond and some researchers with FuseNet, and they in 2005 did this study looking at the forage and comparing that to conflict, and also seeing that the forage amounts, as the forage dropped down, there were not enough grass for the animals to eat, then the people got into conflict over land during that time periods. We see that also the availability of food is a big problem. Not only fodder or forage for the animals, but also food for the people. If there's not enough food for the people, they end up going out and fighting as well. We see that in the communities when people start coming and begging more in our homes. You'll find out that there'll be gunfire that night, or that week you'll hear the machine guns going off in a village and someone going and stealing animals. Oh, also the World Food Program has been fluctuating in the food that they give. So it's like a man-made disaster. All of a sudden there's no food for people. And so when World Food Program is giving food consistently, then people are safe and people don't fight. But when World Food Program goes up and down with their food, like there was some pirates that got a boat out in the Indian Ocean, it stopped our food supply for a month, and that month was horrible. Everyone was fighting during that time. And so that's reflected also in how climate change can change the stability of an area, because you can have a lot of problems from the food insecurity as well. Other driving forces are, besides the scarcity of resource and poverty, we have a weak government, and the security is not very good, so the people have to make their own security, and they end up making their own choices. There's also poor government policies on pastoralism. Here's one of the thieves in the area. His name is Muñez. In fact, he was a horrible raider. He'd been going and killing many, many people in the communities. And this was a couple years ago, he came to the village nearby where I lived. And one of my best friends was there, one of the peacemakers, a Karamojong guy who had helped us to bring two tribes together to try to reconcile them together. He found that guy and he hated him because he was trying to bring peace, and he killed him together with several other people. And so we ended up tracking him, following his footprints, and going up to the home where he lived and trying to see if we could talk to the people and try to get them to change their ideas and to get them to stop fighting. And they said, we don't have food, we don't have money, we don't have any other way to survive except by fighting and trying to steal cows from one another. And so we tried to start a program then in their community so they would have other options, so they have alternative livelihoods and not have to be killing one another. So here they tied him up and threw him in the back of my truck, and we took him away.
Wind it up.
Yeah, I think, let me wind it up a little here. We do see a power imbalance in the communities because they have the army and the military, the other military branches, as well as the youth with the guns end up to have all the power in the villages, and they can't, the people who really would have the control over the communities no longer do, and that would be the elders of the villages. And that power imbalance has thrown off the way that the community is able to stay together. They don't have good policies for how to graze their animals any longer. They don't have good policies for when to plant their crops, and they end up destroying their environment as well as getting into conflicts with one another. Losing lives, losing animals. Let me move up here too. They also leave the area quite a bit, going up to the streets of Kampala, the capital city, to go beg. That's the other coping mechanism that they often use. It's either fight or flight. They either stay and try to fight their way through the problems, or they abandon it and go and beg on the streets. So we try to bring them back and send them to school. Some of the choices that people make on coping mechanisms to cope with the climate change and with the conflict also cause more climate change. One of the biggest ones is that they go and exploit their natural resources. They cut the firewood and they make charcoal, they burn bricks, and they end up destroying the environment in the process. And so it's a bad cycle that they end up getting in. Some choices also are good for the environment. We have quite a few people that are starting agroforestry. We have gum arabic, which is a good medicine and a good product that you can sell on the market also. I think I'll close with this one because my time is running out here. But we do see that there is a significant change in the communities. The communities do want to be able to survive in the villages, but they often need to shift from the lifestyle that they've been living to a new lifestyle. And that is part of what we can do, being together with them, is give them more options, help them to see the opportunities that are there, and help them to choose opportunities that are beneficial for the environment, as well as for building up peace in the communities. And part of that is building up their ability to fight against problems in their communities, teaching them how to reconcile, teaching them how to have peace with one another, because when you don't have peace, you can't have food security either, and you can never have opportunity to overcome climate change, to overcome changes in the weather pattern, the risks that people have there. The people have no resiliency, no ability to overcome if they don't have peace in their communities. So thank you so much. God bless.
Thank you.